Good evening. Welcome to the regular Planning Commission meeting, Grand Blanc Township, January 5th, I believe it is, 2023. Alrighty. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Planning Commission members present this evening. We have Ms. Hugo, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Yancho, Mr. Gellings, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Bush. From Planning and Zoning, Mr. Jeremy Smith. From Giffords Webster, we have Ms. Jill Boehm. Let's see. First item on our agenda is approval of this evening's agenda. Any changes from anyone?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Mr. Anderson to approve the agenda as presented, support by Mr. Yancho. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Mr. Bandersky was not able to join us this evening. Next item would be approval of the meeting minutes from December 1st.
Mr. Chairman, I did not attend that meeting, but from what I understand from the video and so on, I believe these minutes are correct. If no one has any objections, I will make a motion to approve these minutes.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Yancho to approve the minutes as presented, support by Ms. Hugo. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for public comments. We do have a couple of public hearings this evening. And does that also include the master deed amendment as well?
The master deed is a public hearing too also, yes.
Okay. So we have a Holly Road Professional Condo Master Deed Amendment. There will be a public hearing for that. There's a couple of text amendments that we will have public hearings. So if you're here for one of those items, we'll get to you very shortly. So if anyone in the audience would like to address the Planning Commission on anything other than the three items I mentioned, now would be the time. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Bring that back up to the Planning Commission. Next item would normally be correspondence. I didn't see any.
None.
I don't believe we have any technically old business other than we're still looking at a couple text amendments outside of the ones that are
Correct.
public hearing. So new business, Holly Road Professional Condo Master Deed Amendment. Let's hear about it.
I'll introduce this, Pat Parker, Simon Figueroa and Parker. I'm here with Jim Morgan. I've been legal counsel for this project since it started many, many years ago. And we're here with what may be the final amendment, may not be the final amendment, depending on how the occupancy goes. But I'll have Jim come up and explain to you exactly what's been done and what's been divided and who is there. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions either.
Jim Morgan with Holly Road Professional Village, one of the developers of the project. I'm really the one who built it, developed it, and all that stuff. So finally, we got down to the end. The last building's taken a little while to get full, but we finally are full. Tonight, we're addressing kind of the when we built it out, we didn't know exactly how the spaces were going to be divvied up. We actually did a pretty good job because they were all empty spaces. This is, the final thing was Unit 10 that got divided into two spaces. And that's essentially what it is. I actually own both of that whole unit and will own the two units going forward, but to have each tenant space identified properly, that's what we're here to do tonight.
On the site plan that we're looking at, Unit 10 has become which units
Unit 10 has become Unit 17 and 18.
in the end? Anything else? Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, this is site plan number 1129, 9475 Holly Road. As Mr. Morgan already said, that they are looking to split 2 units in half. Actually, it's 10 and 15 that were done from, I believe one was done, I'm not sure if it was done on a previous amendment, but we couldn't find that in our research, but we're trying to correct it as it sits today. So unit 15 also is going to be split in half, and that will become 19 and 20. The planning department feels that this meets the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance, and this will not change the current aesthetics of any of the buildings.
Anything else? No. Any questions from planning commission members? Mr.
As
Anderson?
far as the square footage of the building goes and the number of parking spots and all that, for our zoning purposes, that's not going to change either with this?
Nothing
Footage is the
changes.
same.
Basically, they're changing an interior wall on both units and basically building 2 walls and making 2 into 4.
Okay. Yeah, no.
If no questions from the planning commission, we'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone that's here that wants to comment regarding this. Doesn't look like it, so we'll close the public hearing portion, bring it back up to the planning commission. Any additional comments, questions?
Make a motion to approval of the amendment to the site plan, or I guess, changes meet the spirit of the intent of the zoning ordinance, and the change will not affect the current aesthetics of the site. This is for case number SBR 1129.
Does that also shows up in the language in the master deed here, I presume, right? No.
The change of the, yes,
So it's both the site plan and the master deed.
yes, Attorney Laddie has reviewed these documents as well, so he agrees that as presented, everything is okay.
There was a motion by Mr. Hoffman, I believe, with support by Mr. Bush to approve the amended master deed and the site plan. Site plan case, I didn't catch the number,
1129.
1129. Any other discussion? If not, a vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is zoning case 674, text amendments. One of the text amendments that we're going to go over. Who's handling this one? Is this Ms. Bain? or-
Steve. Accessory. Give you a brief introduction, if that's helpful. Happy New Year, everyone. It's nice to see you. This is an item that we've talked about, I think, over November and December's meetings with regard to accessory roadside stands. We've made a couple of small changes after the last meeting, and those are included here. I believe it was primarily the items A and B under 12. I think that was it. And again, this is to provide for roadside stands, temporary, which would be something seasonal, or something that's more permanent, that's more of an accessory use to an existing permitted use.
So the temporary can be there for 6 months, is that correct?
Correct. Let's see, what does it say? Temporary is based on the ordinance's definition of temporary, which we didn't change.
I have a question, please.
Mr. Yancho?
The temporary roadside stands, they only require approval administratively?
The temporary ones are administrative only.
Permanent or special?
Permanent comes to you folks here for approval.
So the intent is that that temporary uses are temporary, so they may be somewhat based on a certain specific season, but then not exceeding 6 months, just at the end.
All right, I believe any other questions, comments? We have a public hearing scheduled. Are we gonna go over D and E at the same time, or?
Let's do them individually. This one's D.
All right, so we will open up to the public. If there's anyone here that wants to address the planning commission regarding temporary roadside stands,
It's okay. It's not really.
no? We'll find your hot button here soon.
Make a motion to approve text amendment for zoning case 674.
Does this go to township board?
Say that again?
Let's go to township board.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Subject to the approval of the township board.
Amend that to zoning case 674D, and I'll support it.
Thank you. Yes.
So there's a motion by Mr. Yancho to forward zoning the case 674D text amendments to the township board for their approval. More of that was by Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Coulter?
I'm sorry, I should have jumped in a little bit earlier. I just wanted to offer two very technical suggestions. On paragraph 9, I think because that deals with temporary stands, it should say, I think, that a temporary stand shall be of portable construction, permitting it to be removed. And then on 12A, again, we're talking about temporary roadside stands shall be erected, shall be erected for more than, no temporary roadside stand shall be erected for more than 6 months. I would add within a calendar year. I assume that's what we meant,
Yes.
but again, I just thought that we would clarify it.
So could you do 6 months, 1 year, going through January 1st and 6 months into the next year?
I mean, most of these roadside stands are gonna be in the summertime, so it was kind of implied, but I mean, if we've got some I know we've got some out there that are doing, selling of wood and things like that, that may carry over through, it'll cross over a calendar, so.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. Can you just put consecutive before the 6 months? More than 6 consecutive months?
I think I'd rather
What can we do?
see calendar year though, because
Okay.
I'd rather, that would be my preference, calendar year, because I believe 99% of these are gonna be vegetable stands and things like that. There's 1 or 2 wood stands out there that could have a carryover, but all they have to do is just come in and have it approved in January 1 for another 6 months. So, I mean, they could technically have consecutive. Yeah.
Up to a year.
That could be an
It'd
issue.
be 12 months, yeah.
But I think you could, the definition of temporary is saying that it's a seasonal item, so
Right.
what's the season?
So
It's
what-
probably
it's-
not gonna be August through,
Right, whatever
March,
their
it could
season
be.
is, because if they have it January 1, then it only goes through July, and then they're done for the year. So, I mean,
Calendar year's fine.
Can we do no more than 6 months in any 12-month period?
yeah, my concern is trying to keep track of all of it. The simplest to do it, I think, would be calendar year, right?
yes, because I think that would prevent one from being like 2 months and then 2 months off and 2 months on and 2 months off. And well, that would still be 6 months, but
Well, if somebody were to do vegetables and then pumpkins, then there may be a gap between their seasons.
But they only get 6 months no matter how they want to swing it? 6 months, no matter what. And then you're done for the year.
Or temporary.
For temporary.
They wanna do a
This is
permanent?
something that's gonna be an ongoing, every season, let's say, they do mums, then they do vegetables, then they do pumpkins, then they do wood. that, if they're gonna have something up all year round, they need to come before
Right.
all of you folks and be a permanent stand and have it be approved and then be done, and then they don't have to come see me every 6 months.
And I think I tend to agree that for simplicity of enforcement, that per calendar year is probably easier.
That's probably the easiest.
So
Makes sense.
there was a motion and
I'll
support for that.
support adding the word temporary to item number 9 and adding per calendar year to 12A.
I want to make a comment before we finish that here. On number 9, I think it's fine the way it's written because it covers both. Right at the top, under the very first section we're amending, it says temporary and permanent accessory seasonal roadside stands. Do we want to allow somebody to say it's going to be a permanent stand? I'm going to put it on a brick foundation and now we've got a structure. I don't know that we have to put the word any temporary stand in line 9 would really be necessary, would it? I think it's kind of covered right in the opening statement of the.
But on the other side of that, you don't want to say that it's to be a portable construction if it's permanent.
Right, no,
Yeah, I
I think
good-
adding temporary is a,
I think it's reasonable.
yeah, I think it's reasonable.
You accept those changes then, Mr. Anderson?
I'll accept those changes.
Any further discussion? If not, a vote is in order to send this to the township board for their approval. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Okay. Next is zoning case 674E.
All right, within zoning case 674E, we have 2 amendments. They're fairly minor. The first one is to amend section 4.50.1, parking, storage, repair of vehicles. This includes the change, the clarification that when we're talking about vehicles being parked in a front or required side yard area, being on an approved driveway surface, that we are speaking about motor vehicles. Then also allowing an stone base or gravel where the driveway or parking area serves a parcel on an unpaved road, or as a temporary surface for up to a year. But then if those are, where those are permitted, then that still needs to be a compact, dust-free surface.
I'm good with that. We discussed that quite a bit the last time, so we've got that wording narrowed down, in my opinion.
Okay.
Any questions on that one?
No questions and,
No.
Okay. All right, I'll move on to the next one, section 5.2.5. That was for the height of accessory structures, allowing for an additional height of that detached accessory building or structure when it's located on a parcel of land over 2 acres in size, allowing that to be 18 feet instead of the otherwise provided 14 feet.
So the allowable height is kicked up,
allowable mean height.
average height.
It's, yeah, as is measured.
Yep.
Any other discussion on this one? If not, we will open this up to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on either the temporary structures or the, pardon me?
Oh, sorry.
Or the maximum height of any detached accessory building? Okay, we'll bring it back to the planning commission. Any further discussion? If not, a vote is in order to send zoning case 674E to the township board for their approval. Motion by Ms. Hugo, support by Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion? If not, vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes 8-0. Next, zoning case 675, multifamily text amendment.
That That was my note to myself. This is zoning case 675, the appearance standards for attached single-family and multiple-family dwelling units. No significant changes have been made since the last time we saw this last month, except for a typo that was just pointed out to me in number 1A, building materials. And that was that the proposed material meets the intent of this section to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. As determined by the Planning Commission, the intent of that phrase was to say that there could be an equivalent material to brick, stone, metal, glass, wood. If an applicant wants to present that, they need to demonstrate to the Planning Commission's satisfaction that it meets those standards, or similar, that it's similar to in terms of being high quality and a durable material.
So what should the wording say? I see there's a little bit of a bracketed.
Yeah, it should say maybe an equivalent material of equal durability and aesthetics may be permitted if the applicant demonstrates the proposed material meets the intent of the section to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. And I think that's all it needs to say. It can end there.
Instead of the word equivalent, you change that to what?
No, she's just taking out that last line.
That's the last line, okay,
Yeah, from the bracket to the end should be deleted.
okay.
Sorry for the confusion there.
All right, that looks better to me too.
Any other comments? Anything else in here?
No.
I reviewed the rest of it and I find it okay. I'll make the motion to.
Here, got a little bit of answer.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll see if any public has any comment on this one.
Stepping ahead.
It's all right, I like your efficiency. All right, we'll open up the public hearing on zoning case 675 regarding, I guess, the appearance standards for single-family and multifamily dwelling units. Any comments on this one? Yes, sir.
Wait, hold on. Please come to the stand and say.
We just need your
address,
name
please.
and, name and address for the record, that's all. Chance, you didn't know you were gonna get some exercise either this evening, did you?
Pardon me?
You didn't know you were gonna get some exercise this evening either.
Ah, yeah, I need it at my age. My birthday was last Friday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday to you.
Do I have to identify myself or just?
Name and address, please.
My name is John McMurray. My address is 6238 Cold Spring Trail in Grand Blanc Township. My question is do these changes apply to new buildings, existing buildings, or a combination of the two?
It would be new construction.
New construction. Are these more constrictive, less constrictive than what is in existence now? Or equal weight for the developer?
Summarize, I think there's a little.
Sure, I could try to summarize that. First of all, there are no appearance standards for multiple family dwellings right now, so these are new standards, and the intent is to make multiple family buildings look nice and high quality in the township, as do many of the residential, single-family residential areas. This started with a question for an attached single-family project. The current requirements say that there can be no more of or that there has to be 50% of the wall offset. So if you are looking from the roof down, that townhouses should look like this, and that, and that. And we've changed that a little bit to say that they can do that, or they can make it a little bit closer, but then they have to have other things that make the buildings look nice. And that was the original intent of this, was that you didn't have a long row of townhomes just along a big rectangular building. So it changes the appearance standards for those kinds of dwellings, the attached single family like a row house or a townhome. and just adds in some additional standards for appearance that are very similar to standards that you might see in other communities.
But it wouldn't necessarily add more units to a,
Have anything to do with that?
okay. We are just interested in trying to preserve the green space that we have now, rather than allowing variances that might eliminate that green space.
Yeah, this does not address, this portion does not address, it's the appearances, as was mentioned, we want some variation, just not a big fat, or flat
Yeah.
facade that runs the full length, give it a little variety for the building.
Okay. I thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else want to address the planning commission? If not, we'll close the public hearing, bring it up to the planning commission. Any other discussions here?
I will make a motion to approve zoning case ZC 675 for approval to the Township Board.
Mr. Anderson has made a motion to forward zoning case 675 to the township board for their approval. With our
Support.
recommendation, support by Ms. Hugo. You sit too far away from me.
I know.
Wyatt, turn your sign.
Any other discussion? If not, a vote is in order. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion also passes 8-0. All right. Next item is a discussion on zoning case 674 F.
Ready? Yep. Okay. This is not a public hearing. This is initial discussion on 3 changes. The first one is proposed change to building height in the general commercial district. You'll see it in the table on the first page of the memo that shows each of the zoning districts in the township with the permitted heights right now and the number of stories. There have been, there was at least one variance request this past year for a height in the general commercial district. So the proposal is to go from 30 to 40 feet and from 2 to 3 stories. You would note that it's the same as the professional office district, which is kind of interesting, although that allows 40 feet but doesn't include the number of stories. The office service district is 35 feet and 2.5 stories. It's quite a bit different from neighborhood commercial, which is 20 feet and 1 story, but also comparable to the light industrial and general industrial, which are quite a bit higher, that we just changed to make those higher. Right. So that's the first change. And it doesn't really relate to either of the other two, so if you want to just maybe talk about that one first.
So where would we see this for general commercial for 3 stories? Have we seen any requests along those lines?
What was the one that the variance was for?
There was this was a kind of there was a question, a developer asked how a certain appraiser asked how a certain building, it was a hotel on Holly Road, got to be a certain point. And I couldn't, in my findings, figure out what happened and how it was allowed to be the height that it was. Not that that makes any difference, but going forward, we feel that any new buildings could potentially, in general commercial, use the extra height, extra 10 feet and extra story for future developments. This has nothing to do with any proposed or anything that I have on my desk today. It's just keeping in line with future developments, like we did for light industrial, raising it up to 50 feet instead of 40, so.
So the question that I had raised in the memo as a discussion item was there are areas of general commercial, for example, along Saginaw, the Saginaw corridor that abut single-family residential, and whether 40 feet and 3 stories would be appropriate, or if you want to consider a setback or a setback of the building height itself or the whole building. But there are other properties, if we look at the zoning map, and we don't have one printed in here. We should.
There's one, but not in here. They took them all down when they remodeled.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they
we should
have
probably
them
have that out
Yeah.
here. But there are other areas in the township, for example, the Office Service District, that also do abut single-family residential, as well as a portion of the Professional Office District, which I think also is on Saginaw.
There's some on Hill Road too,
Yeah,
not up to residential.
yeah, north of McCandlish on Saginaw, in the Professional Office District that already has the same height.
Should we be addressing some language just adjacent to residential, that it comes down, or? Mr. Hoffman?
I agree. I mean, there's times where people will get upset because the property next door to them is being developed. And of course, they have the right to do that. This is, now we're changing what the development can be next door. And going up really can lessen the privacy, especially of a home. I mean, privacy of another commercial building is not that much of an issue, but the privacy of a single-family home or dwellings, I think, is something that we should be aware of and mindful of.
Wait, Mr. Bush?
Just to reiterate more on what Mr. Smith said, if you look at the setback requirement for general commercial currently on a side yard is 10 feet. So that's fairly close to the lot line next door. So one thing, if we are to go forward with, say, 35, 40 feet and 3 stories, we may want to include a larger setback to go along with that. We'll give you this if we increase the side yard setback, and that way it kind of sets it back off for the next property next door.
And it's a good comment, a good observation. Also to note that the Professional Office District, where the height is 40 feet, that it's 20 feet on the side yard. So it is more, and where in the office service, where it's 35 feet, the setback is 15 on the sides, 20 in the rear, compared to 30 for professional office and 20 for general commercial. So you could make those adjustments to side setbacks, or you could leave the setbacks the same and say that if a building is taller than 30 feet, it has to meet the additional setbacks. So that wouldn't change the current
Right.
standards, but would give that additional setback for additional height.
Don't we have on some of our ordinance sections where I'm trying to think what it was, that we looked at, the setback was equal to the building height. So if they start raising the building height up, you had to push it farther away.
I think we may do that for industrial, and I can look that up real quick, but.
While she's looking that up, can I make a comment really quick? If you look in your, I don't know if everybody has their zoning ordinance book in front of them.
No.
But a lot of the commercial, the side setback isn't really the problem because let's just say along Saginaw, the whole frontage along Saginaw is general commercial. So it's not really a side setback, it's more of a rear setback. Because they butt up in the rear to residential behind those properties. So maybe.
Well, and it is 50 feet if it's adjacent to a residential district already.
So it's 50 if it's adjacent to residential already on the rear setback.
So it is taller. I mean, if you had a maximum building height of 40, your setback is still 50 feet.
Right. So I'm not opposed to changes and, offsetting things if it gets to a certain height. I don't have any problem with that, but just so you're aware, there is 50 feet of rear setback already.
Which is more than the height.
Yeah, 50 feet's fine.
So I don't know if you want to end up changing side setback when most of your commercial is going to have commercial next to it. If the issue is behind, or maybe in some cases in front.
One of the examples is the healthcare district. Now there's a whole bunch of different standards there, but one of the standards is the regular setback standard, and then 1 additional foot of setback for each foot of building height over 25 feet. So that could be an option for side setbacks for buildings that are taller than 30. So if it went up to 40, it would be an extra 10 feet, which I think gets you kind of where you were talking about.
Mr. Anderson, I think.
I was just going to mention, kind of reading, satisfied with it as presented. It gives adequate space behind the building, I think, to buffer residential, and I think there's minimal properties that's going to occur to anyway that aren't already developed in our township. So it's, I don't really see this as being anything that we have to modernize to protect residential. I want to make it, our general commercial development areas attractive to developers. I want people to come here. Everybody always says, well, you know, Fenton's got this and Brighton's got Hopkinton. This is an opportunity for us to kind of, without really hindering on the residential properties or changing anything directly right now, make it a little more attractive for a business to want to build here. You know what I'm saying? Give them some options they can make their building fit.
Mr. Yancho?
In the same spirit Mr. Anderson brought up, why wouldn't we consider doing the same thing in the research and development district?
I appreciate your comment, Mr. Yancho, but you've seen in the last, I don't know, probably 6-8 months, a lot of our research and development is kind of going away. That's one, not that we're never gonna have anything like that, but that's few and far between. Everything that was down Tri-Park at that east end, we've basically rezoned to light industrial now. Well, I have no problem changing those items. I just want you to be aware, the research and development district is, I mean, maybe in the next master plan, obviously that's, 5 to 10 years down the road, that may not even exist anymore. Just because we don't have, they'll get absorbed either into commercial or light industrial. It could happen. I'm just throwing it out there. Just want you guys to be aware of.
Well, I think the point that Ben brought up, we want to make sure we protect the residential that may be adjacent.
Correct. That's always our main focus, especially when it butts up to commercial.
I'd just like to make sure that we invite developers to come in that may want to fall into that category.
Was there support for that additional height there, or?
I'll support it as presented right on here with the 30 to change to 40 feet on general commercial and the 2 stories change to 3 stories on general commercial properties.
And then the research and development,
Leave the research development
At the
as
same-
is. Yep.
Ms. Coulter, do you have any comments? You always have an interesting perspective.
No,
for us.
as far as, I don't have a problem with the heights. I mean, we could, deal with the side yards maybe in a separate, proposal, but I don't have a problem with the height. Or the setbacks, rather.
And I think we're really only going to see this come into play when we have a hotel or we have, I can't think of any, retail that's over 1 story or maybe 2 stories. There's a couple on Saginaw, very south end of town, where it's a 2-story, but it's, it's all one business. It's not multiple businesses where there's, businesses on the bottom and on the second level. So it ultimately, I think, boils down to potentially hotels. That's not what it's intended for. It's just, I don't know how many businesses are really going to be affected by this new change. It was just to keep in line with the other changes we've already made.
So you could build a 1-story general commercial building up to 40 feet high with this. Is that correct?
Sure.
It's just somebody wanted a big presence, and in theory, they could do that.
Yeah.
typically the way the ordinance is written, though, it says whichever is less.
40 feet.
So it would say
stories,
1
whichever is
story or
less.
50 feet, whichever is less. Or, so if it was 1 story, well, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Just, it seems like years ago, there seemed to be, like with retail buildings, they kept getting, even though
Taller.
they're 1 story, they kept getting taller and taller. They were grabbing, trying to grab everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Still are.
I mean,
A lot of the, and I'm going to, again, kind of refer to what I've seen around other parts of the state that I've traveled to. This would apply to buildings such as professional office buildings that I've seen, for example, in Traverse City, some really, really beautiful buildings. The first floor is a Starbucks and a florist shop and a couple other businesses. And the second floor is office, general commercial, not general commercial, I'm sorry, office and more of that type of usage, one building.
Right.
And aesthetically from the street, they look fantastic.
I don't know how tall the new Elga headquarters is behind, but that's a pretty tall building too.
Tall building too, yeah.
Probably, it's all of 30 feet, I'm guessing.
40.
Is it? I don't, that was before my time, so I don't know.
Can't recall the height right now, but it's 4 stories.
Yeah, it's 40 feet.
But this, I think this, another thing too, this is just gonna give, again, it makes our code less restrictive to what a lot of developers are doing these days. And again, you travel to Bloomfield, you travel to, like I said, Traverse City, I've seen them in, even in Fenton now, where Fenton redeveloped their square, there's 4-story buildings and stuff with retail type business on the first floor and office and other stuff on the second, third, fourth floors. And it works well.
Was everybody good with it as it's presented, or any changes? Mr. Bush?
I'm fine with it. I still think we need to add an additional side yard.
Okay.
If nothing else, just to prevent the developer from putting a blanket building and covering the whole site plan. If he wants a tall building, I think, give us more green space. I like Jill's wording. If you could reiterate what you said again.
One
the way you worded it.
additional foot of setback is required for each additional foot of building height when the side lot line abuts a single-family residential district.
And that way, we're not hindering a lot that sits next to another commercial building. We're just protecting a residential district.
And really
If
just
there is
single-family too, because those are lower. Once you get into low-density multifamily, you're 35 feet. So it doesn't seem like as much of an issue necessarily.
Everybody good with that suggestion?
So it'll trigger once you hit past the current standard of 30 feet, correct?
Yeah.
One additional foot. Okay.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. I'm still puzzled on the idea, if I'm a residential and I'm next to a commercial, am I warned that this is a possibility of a change, or is it just gonna be put on me?
Well, because we do have some where there's a residential lot on a commercially zoned property. You're legal non-conforming at that point. So I mean, eventually, we know that up and down all of Saginaw Road, whether there's a house on it or not, at some point, those are probably going to change to commercial. They're not always gonna be residential, so. No, they're not. I mean, there's no way to notify every house in general commercial, but
I don't think it would be too much of a surprise if I'm, a legal non-conforming. It would be more for, I'm behind in rear. That it would be, so anybody who's built houses, had it there and things of that nature, they know that they're behind, behind them is general commercial and people can build up to a certain level. I mean, next year, they could level that building or add to that. And they built their house with the understanding that this was as high as they can go. Now all of a sudden, we're gonna change it to, hey, you can go 50% more.
well, if you think of it this way too, if there's not a special land use and there's a site plan that comes before you, they don't get notified.
No, I'm just
No, no,
asking the
I'm just-
question, do they get notified? And the answer is no.
No, it's because just like in a normal site plan, unless there's a special land use or a variance, there's no way, no 300-foot notice goes out on a normal site plan that meets the design standards that are already in the book, so.
Are you asking about how people would be advised of this potential change?
Yeah, I mean, because
Right,
one of
'cause they're not gonna
the
get a notice.
defenses that we have is buyer beware, know what you're building next to, know what could be going in beside you. Somebody owns that land and what could be going. They could have done all their homework and said, I know that could go there, so I'm gonna build this house. And then tomorrow, oh, by the way, we've changed our minds and now we can go 25, 30% higher. Huh?
Kind of like the Jewel.
Yeah. So I just,
Is there any consideration to the wording that Ms. Boehm talked about? Not maybe just the side yard, but it's if you exceed the 30 feet, that you just have to start pushing it back?
both ways, not only from the side, but maybe also from the rear too?
So it's a 50-foot setback right now if you're adjacent to residential district.
It's already 50.
that's already taller than the
But it could
building that
be-
you're allowed to build.
I'm not.
You could add an
Yeah, like I
additional,
said, I'm not worried about the building falling down and going into the residential. What I'm worried about is somebody being on the roof and saying, wow, they are, in their jacuzzi or whatever it
I
is.
mean, at 30 feet, you could do that too. I mean,
It's easier to do it at 40 than
sure,
30.
well, I'm just saying, I'm just
Right.
having a discussion.
Right,
I'm not
no,
arguing, I'm just,
That's, but the person who built there knows that it could be at 30. Now it's at 40.
Posted notice for the,
sure. I mean, I see what you're saying, but
I'm trying to have an opportunity that we don't look like we pulled the rug out from underneath a resident.
Right.
That's all I was thinking of.
I mean, if you, I'm just playing devil's advocate with you. If it was a single story retail, they bulldoze it and put in a 3-story hotel,
Nothing they can do.
there's nothing they can do about it. So I mean, if it fits in the ordinance and they don't need any variances and they don't need any special land use, I think a hotel is a
Well, I
special.
think we would try to look at that at site plan and take that in
Well,
consideration.
and we always look at that because that's the first thing that is my job and you folks too, is to look at and make sure that the residential is always taken care of when a new site plan comes in for any commercial.
The only difference is that is what the ordinance says now. And they
Right.
somebody might have made their decisions on what the ordinance is now. We're now making a change to the ordinance to it.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, do they get notified of this? No.
Unfortunately, no.
I think that's a shame. So I think I think it is our responsibility to protect that. And I guess I would say, go for, if you're gonna go to the extra story, not only do you have to pull back from the side, but pull back even more from the rear. At least we tried something to help the residents.
does that seem like an additional foot of setback for each additional height over 30 for front, or side and rear?
Side yard or?
Side and rear?
Side and rear.
Yeah, I disagree with that because that makes most of our remaining general commercial properties, they're not huge as it is. And now my building's gonna be 4 stories tall and 30 feet wide. Because that's all that I can fit on this property after I have to meet all your setback requirements.
Although I guess I might say that for those smaller properties, they're still going to have to find a way to park it.
Right,
So if they've got a 3rd story and that's more space, they're going to have more parking. So probably by necessity, they're not going to fill up the whole lot anyway if it's a small lot, because they're going to need it for parking.
And I'm actually a little bit more concerned about parcels that are already there, or somebody coming in and adding a story to where they could, or leveling the building and building a new one.
And we made the parking bigger too.
Right. Yeah, you would need the parking bigger.
We did that already.
Right.
The
And
parking
We've already made them.
Spaces, yeah, the size of each space, yeah.
it is something that you could add in now as an extra level of setback. And then if the ZBA finds that they're getting repeated cases of requests for variances for that distance rear setback, then maybe you think about changing it.
Mr. Anderson?
What type of things are you seeing in other communities for this same type of build?
For commercial buildings,
Yeah, for commercial buildings and setbacks.
it really depends on the community and where it is. And I don't think that 43 stories or 40 feet is unusual. I'd have to look a little bit. I'd probably want to look at some that are maybe more similar. And I can,
Talking about applies just adjacent to residential properties.
and and typically if there's going to be additional setback, a lot of communities will do that against a residential district, particularly single family.
Any changes that we discuss will be suggestions to the township board and will be subject to a public hearing, right?
Well, you'll hold the public hearing whenever you're ready to do that. And we'll try and get some of the comparables for you too, if that's helpful.
But just like today, we had public hearing.
Yep.
Did we post it on our website?
The
Yes.
agenda does, yes. Well, we're having
I'm
issues.
gonna try to make, hopefully I know there was one dissent, but is there support for more rear along with the same
Yes.
the side? I just wanna make sure that Jill got a clear message.
Just residential.
Okay, just next to
Residential,
residential.
yeah.
What?
So yes, my
Yes.
ask was
yes?
The majority said yes to that.
Okay. Thought that's what.
The majority didn't.
Oh, no, I just thought of a different, you're correct. I just thought of a different scenario. And you mentioned it before, we have non-conforming legal structures in this type of business, and I'm gonna build my office building on this lot right here, and then I got a home next to me that's non-conforming legal. Does that still apply? Do I have to meet that?
Because it's not.
Residential, but it's not.
It's
Okay.
zoned.
Zoned commercial. Okay, very good, thank you.
Yes, good question.
So you got your direction then to come back with some wording?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to write myself one more note. The next one is something that I think started to touch on last month. And this is with respect to shipping containers and storage pods. So first, we have to define what those are. So we've included definitions for both shipping containers and storage pods. And then provided under section 5.2.b accessory structures, detached structures, under number 10, that shipping containers and portable storage containers are prohibited except that a portable storage container may be permitted for one 30-day period per year with approval from the planning and zoning administrator.
I'll start with this one. I like it. That's it.
It's straightforward.
I guess homes. They're very surprising where they've taken these containers, kind of arranged them, and then they've finished.
Now, we're not opposed to that, but I've seen homes built with storage containers.
You don't want to just these.
We don't want to use it as a shed, is basically what this is getting at.
Right.
You know, if you want to bring in engineering and bring it to our building department, and you want to build a house out of storage containers, by all means, if you can finagle it, great. I'd love to see it. Because I've seen, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're steel. I mean, I've seen, you would never
they're very
know
cool.
from the outside that it was a storage container home. That's not what we're saying. We're saying for a shed purpose, we do not want to see them used as a shed.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Yancho.
is there an exception for construction sites? I know for a fact that at the Grand Blanc Enterprise Park, there are several shipping containers used as safe storage for equipment on those construction
Yeah,
sites.
I
and
think we
they're
account
for
for
longer
that.
than 30 days.
In our temporary storage section, or our temporary use section.
So the language here is to address the accessory structures.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't change anything for other, I'm just trying to find that quickly. I'm not finding it. Temporary. So in the section on temporary uses, section 9 of section 7.13, I think it is. A allows temporary buildings and structures, including trailers incidental to construction work on the lot for periods not to exceed 1 year in undeveloped areas of the township and for a period not to exceed 6 months in developed areas. And then there's some standards for it. This is on page 7-17. So I don't think.
Sounds like that covers it.
I think it covers it. It doesn't say that you can't use that at this time. So unless that's something that you want to change, but it doesn't sound like it.
I think that's.
It seems
The
reasonable.
example you brought up is the
Yeah.
perfect example of what we want those to be used for on a construction site. So we don't have to look at all the debris or building materials or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It's put away in a storage container, and then when the job is finished, everything disappears.
Right.
Good.
Is that it, just those two items?
That's it for that one. There's one more. Under electronic message signs, and we've talked about this before, and we've talked about changing it before, and we've never done it. The portion of a message having a minimum duration of 5 minutes. Question is, would you consider reducing the time to 1 minute?
Mr. Chairman.
Everything else be the same. It still has to be a static display. It can't
Ms. Coulter?
flash, scroll, twirl, color, move, and other things.
Yeah, this came up 3 or 4 years, some years ago, so I don't know how many people here remember the discussion. But we did have quite a discussion, and there was a proposal to reduce it to 1 minute, and that was, didn't pass. I was opposed to it then, and I'm opposed to it now, basically because I think those, message signs that, change messages are distracting. And if you're driving, there's so many distractions already. We're just, we will be adding to the amount of distraction that you get when you're driving down the road. So I just voted against it then, and I'm not supportive of it now.
Mr. Bush?
Just a quick question, and maybe for yourself and Ms. Coulter. Between my stints on the Planning Commission, my first stint, we didn't even allow electronic signs, period.
Right.
So sometime after, when I got off, they were obviously allowed. And I don't know when that happened, because obviously I wasn't here. I agree with Ms. Coulter, they're so distracting. I drive so much around town. They flash in your face. They try to get them as bright as they can. I'm almost all for taking them out like they used to be, but definitely not moving them to a minute.
It's the current technology, but we also have a brightness limitation in the ordinance.
The whole thing is I'm not in charge of code enforcement, so there's problem number one. If I was in charge, then we'd have this would be more looked at, so. But the whole point of 5 minutes, at that point, you might as well have a static sign. You might as well just have a regular, normal monument sign. At that point, what's the difference? A minute maybe is, up for debate, but 5 minutes, I mean, you sit at a light for 30 seconds to 45 seconds to maybe a minute, so, I mean, 2 minutes, minute and a half, I mean, that's the reason why it's up for discussion tonight.
Mr. Hoffman?
So I don't think it's the duration of the likelihood of you seeing it changed, while you're sitting there changed 2 or 3 times. It's more of that's now 60 times an hour that it is going to be flashing. It's a whole lot more times. As you're driving by, you're more likely to see it change. Not that you see it more times change, that you're more likely to see it the one time change. And the second thing is changing a message 5 minutes can be very beneficial. I mean, look at a gas station who changes their price maybe once a day. But instead of having somebody go out there and have a portable thing that they could lose or break and they're just sitting there in a nice little warm place and change the button. And that doesn't need to change more than, maybe twice a day, but it doesn't need to change a lot. Or I'm a restaurant and I have my Monday specials dinner is this. I don't need to change it, but I might need to change that once a day. So I think a 5-minute duration is very, very helpful for those who want to have different messages. And I actually don't see it needing to change more than that. I don't need to read a book, while I'm sitting someplace and going, okay, turn the page so I can read more. Oh, that's what, we don't want to get into that. So I'm okay with leaving it at 5 minutes.
Mr. Anderson?
I am normally in agreement just about this board, and tonight I feel like such an outcast, because I think this is, a 1 minute is fine. If we were to sit here and stare at that wall for 5 minutes, we'd all get really, really bored, and everybody, 1 minute, if you just set your phone for 60 seconds and stared at a sign for 1 minute, it's a fairly long time. I think that's plenty. The one that comes to mind, just for example, right now, Culver's, they do fundraisers all the time for local Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, cheerleading. They open up their store to allow all this stuff, and they'll have their sign that displays Culver's in their regular display, and then they'll flip the sign to say, Tuesday, the 10th, supporting Boy Scout Troop 106 fundraiser, boom, and and the more cars that drive by and get to see that, the more that's gonna kind of get out to the community. And gas stations, I don't think this really applies to me, because I consider the gas stations with their price almost, that's pretty much static. But any type of business, there's a dentist office in the city that does it. I don't know what their exact ordinances are, but it's met up in less than 5 minutes. It's not distracting to me. I kind of sit there and most of the time don't see it change. When you're driving by and it does flash, I don't see it as, whoa, what was that? You know,
Helga Credit Union is another example of
Helga Credit
one that
Union.
changes. They have, because when this was coming up, I kind of drove the town and.
They flash a lot.
Well, but that's already in the ordinance that that's not allowed. So if there's things that aren't allowed, that's something that code enforcement has the ability to go after them and say, okay, this is too bright, this is flashes. You can't have any of this, it has to be a static message and it just like flips a page, like you say, and that's your new message. And it can't blink, it can't draw your attention to distract you anymore, it just changes the message.
I think when they were originally constructed, their message was changing quite.
Was.
And it's,
We addressed that, one of my first issues, code enforcement and myself addressed that and told them that, no, look, this can't be the way it is, so.
has there been complaints or?
I've had businesses just offhand say, what's the point of constructing a digital sign if I have to wait 5 minutes? I might as well just have a reader out there and go put, the slide in plastic letters. I mean, if I want to change it every day, I'll just go out and put plastic letters. Do we want digital and look like a technology-driven township, or do we want the slider letters that, that look cheap and outdated, or do you want just a normal sign that just says Elga Credit Union?
Mr. Bush?
I guess my comment is, when I see a sign, I read it. I don't want to do this when I'm driving down the road, because I'm reading a sign that's flashing or scrolling. And that's dangerous. You're taking your eyes off the road.
well, flashing and scrolling is not allowed now.
But
It's
if,
not
but if
allowed here.
it's changing, he's like, oh, that changed. What's the new one say? You're taking your eyes off the road. It's just a very distracting sign. At night, not so much during the day. So it's only half the time.
Anyone else?
I think 1 minute's quite a long period of time, actually. At 30 miles an hour, that's 2,600 feet in 1 minute. You can hardly see a sign that's 2,600 feet in front of you. And so then within that 1 minute span,
Ms. Coulter?
And I think we have to keep in mind, when you're driving, there's all kinds of distractions, and if you're driving in a commercial area where there's, commercial building after commercial building, if they're all having, they all have signs on 1 minute changes, plus you gotta watch for pedestrians, you gotta watch for cars, gotta watch for light. I think I don't see any real justification for adding to the amount of distraction when you're driving.
Mr. Yancho?
I think our sign ordinances are pretty, from a commercial point of view, I think that our sign ordinance is pretty restrictive as far as the size and the amount of information that can be put on a sign. And, if I was a person in the commercial business that is trying to sell something, I would want it to be 1 minute. That's quite a long period of time, in my opinion.
Agreed. I also think the digital signs, as far as that goes, are here to stay, like it or not. And a lot of franchise-type businesses now, as a matter of fact, require them. If you're going to be a franchise owner, your building has to meet these standards. And yeah, even Grand Blanc High School, their sign is getting dilapidated. It says in the city again, in Warren, looking dated. There's been discussion about putting a digital sign there. So they're here to stay. They're coming. People aren't putting vinyl signs up anymore.
I don't think
Hoffman?
anybody's saying take all the digital signs away. Also, going from 12 changes per hour to 60 changes per hour is a 400% increase in changing.
Okay.
I'm a no for this.
I agree.
Does 2 minutes make sense? Or are you steadfast on 5 minutes?
Personally, I could support something less than 5 minutes, but I don't want to go down to 1 minute. So that's just my own personal.
2 minutes enough? I'm just asking. If the time is the issue and the distraction's the issue, is 2 minutes. I mean, in 2 minutes, you could have, at a light, you could have 3 change-throughs of traffic in 2 minutes.
I guess I look at a sign as a tool to identify a business, not in like an advertisement or marketing tool. Is the way I kind of view a sign. A sign is used for me to identify what type of business is at that location, not identify what type of services that business is offering at any particular time. So that's kind of my position.
You know that before you're going there anyway.
I'm not a fan of flashing signs. They're distracting. I've had.
Well, but we're not gonna allow flash.
I understand, but the changing, if you have
Sure.
if you put multiple signs, digital signs for different businesses back to back, and you have them all changing every 60 seconds, that's a multitude of changes down over a certain. It could be a distraction. I could see it being a distraction. But I'm kind of a curmudgeon these days too. So.
We hear you.
Honesty.
I guess, someone mentioned the Elga Credit Union. I agree that if I'm gonna go to the credit union, I'm going to the credit union when I'm ready to go there. And seeing a change in, hey, we raised our interest rates by another 0.1% or something isn't gonna make me pull in one way or the other. So I guess I'm agreeing that I don't want to go down too low. I'm okay leaving it 5 minutes too. Any other comments? So this was just kind of a throw it out there.
This is discussion, see where it's
I don't
stuck.
know, so-
I mean,
So we've got 2 people at 1 minute and the rest at 5 and nothing in between. No compromise?
Sarah, do you have opinion?
I mean, I work at Grand Blanc Schools and we still change the letters on our marquee. So it does, I honestly, if I see a sign and I don't really pay attention. Probably because I live here and work 5 minutes from my home and I see the same signs every single day.
I will say that as far as no compromise, I think having a digital sign is a compromise. And then being able to change it every 5 minutes, the ease of that, the colors that you can use, the thing is a compromise to a lot of people. I think having the ability to have digital signs is a huge step in the efficiencies of businesses to be able to say something out there. I mean, if I'm a business, why am I changing my message? I don't think I would even use the 5 minutes. I'd do it, and that's probably what I'm gonna do for the quarter, or for the week, or for at least the day.
Exactly.
I don't have a message,
I agree with that.
buy this stock this hour, buy that stock next hour, I just don't see the need for all the information. So I think it's a tremendous compromise to have a digital sign out there to begin with. So, anyway.
All right, you threw it out there, you heard some feedback, right?
That's fine. I was tasked with going through the book, and that was just one of the things I thought was something that we could take a look at if we don't want to change it.
Do we have a provision for Amber Alert for digital signs? Are they required to post Amber Alerts?
I think that's just it's not in the zoning ordinance, it's just, I think, another.
That's cool stuff there. That's good. Yeah, that'd be neat. If we have a problem, just be able to ask all the businesses at one time, be able to say, bam, change your sign to this.
Mr. Chairman.
Only 1 in every 5,000 cars is gonna see
I
it.
don't know about that.
No, you would leave it at that.
Well, that's
So
true.
it's
A
done.
change to leave it, right?
Yeah, you would leave it.
Nacho, you had one other thing?
I just want to play a devil's advocate position. As we move forward, we're going to see more and more digital signs, in my opinion. And if we have a sign every 300 feet and every 5 minutes one changes, we're seeing flashing lights. Could we construct our ordinance to say that they have to change? Let's say we leave it at 5 minutes, every 5 minutes on the hour, so that they all change at one time instead of sequentially changing as you drive along.
Mr. Yancho, would you like to come work for code enforcement department, please?
I need a job.
we tried to
I'm
get the-
retired now.
We tried to get the lights in sync from the road commission up here for years.
Yeah, I would find that more distractive because I think the television all of a sudden go,
What just
off.
happened? Everything changes in front of my eyes.
It's a neat thing to think
Devil's
about.
advocate.
It's interesting.
It's a neat thing to think about.
We ready for committee report?
None,
No?
none.
You got something else?
No ZBA meeting.
No ZBA, we had, everything got kind of canceled through December. I've got nothing other than Mr. Gellings is officially retired, so congratulations, sir.
From my daytime job.
Our day job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
There you go. Mr. Yancho, you were officially retired too, is that? Yes,
sir.
Perfect, excellent.
I'm going to work tomorrow.
There you go.
Yeah, me too.
I have 7.4581 years until I can until I can retire as of December 31st.
13 seconds.
Looked it up today.
Have a calendar and you mark little X's.
I might. Paper chain.
Have anything?
Wait, I have a committee report.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, he was trying
Wow.
to erase yours.
Man. So we had a very short 2-hour meeting, special meeting on December 29th. It was regarding the POLC unit. The Grand Blanc Township Police Department, the officers and sergeants presented us with a tentative agreement. And after a very quick 2 hours, we approved it unanimously. So,
Very good, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Anyone else have anything else before we adjourn?
Vince isn't here. He told me to fill in for him.
Motion by Mr. Anderson to adjourn, support by Mr. Johnson. Adjourn at 8:13 PM. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.